Ever since August 2024, there has been a seismic shift in India Bangladesh relations. The former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina was seen as a reliable and trusted friend of India. But feelings against Sheikh Hasina were strong on the ground in Bangladesh, and her ties with New Delhi seemed to have worked both against her and against India. While Sheikh Hasina now lives in exile in Delhi, India Bangladesh ties have plunged to their lowest point in 3 decades. The latest in this ongoing saga is the visit of Chief Administrator Mohammad Yunus, who heads the interim administration in Dhaka, to Beijing, where he was given a very warm welcome by President Xi Jinping and others. The two sides have signed a raft of agreements. With me today to discuss the impact of this visit, the challenges to India Bangladesh ties, and about the developments in Bangladesh politics in general, our guest today is the distinguished Bangladeshi economist and public policy specialist, Dr. Debapriya Bhattacharya. He is at Dhaka Center for Policy Dialogue. He also headed a committee that prepared a white paper on the state of the Bangladesh economy for the interim administration. It was released in December 2024, and its headline finding was that among the reasons for Bangladesh's financial and economic instability was the corruption that had eaten at the vitals of the economy. By the calculations of the white paper, Bangladesh had lost uh, $16 billion annually over the last 15 years through money laundering alone. Dr. Bhattacharya, welcome to Frontline.
Thank you.
Let me start by asking you about the visit to China by Professor Yunus. By all accounts, the meetings were expansive. He invited China to invest more in Bangladesh. They spoke about the Tista River Comprehensive Management and Restoration Project. They also spoke about maritime cooperation. Bangladesh and China had a close relationship even under Sheikh Hasina's government, even during her term in government. In fact, uh, Bangladesh has long imported weapons for its military from China. But at that time, it did not seem to make a difference that this was happening. Would you agree that in the change situation in Bangladesh, the enhanced cooperation between Bangladesh and China could put further strain on the India Bangladesh relationship than there is already?
Let me put this particular visit in perspective, particularly for your audience in India. You may remember that the Bangladesh government did ask for a bilateral meeting with the Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi. And if I understand the chief advisors of the government's mind right, the government was eager to have the first bilateral meeting with with our nearest neighbor, India. Unfortunately, it didn't materialize as of today. So only when it became clear that the bilateral summit is not going to take place with India, it is then the Bangladesh government decided on the dates of the travel to China. So it could have been other way. And that was the expected thing, because if you go back into the history, even after the change of government, when Professor Yunus came to power, there was call from Delhi from at the highest level, and Professor Yunus responded to that by taking an invitation to speak at the Southern Conference virtually at that time in Delhi. That was an unique gesture, reciprocal gesture. Thereafter, there had been a meeting with the foreign minister of India in New York. I had been privy to that. I was part of the delegation at that time in New York, UNGA. And then thereafter, your foreign secretary visited us in Dhaka, one of the outcomes of that. So for many of us, it was a logical expectation that it will usher into a summit level meeting. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. We thought that it will happen at least on the sidelines of the BIMSTEC upcoming meeting. And now we know that the Indian side is not going to respond positively to our request. So from when it became very clear that the first bilateral meeting or bilateral visit will not happen with the Indian side, then the government moved on with China. And the reception in China had been overwhelming because the chief advisor went to the BAO conference, which is a regional Asian conference. But thereafter, he went to met the head of the governments and head of the other institutions, spoke to the students. He was given an honorary doctorate as expected. So, and thereafter, the multifaceted agreements were done, which ranged from economics, trade, particularly duty-free market access after the Bangladesh comes out of the LDC group, and also moving on to the issues of TISTA and also bigger cooperation with Belt and Road and other things as well. So one of the new issues which has come up, of course, is how to facilitate the medical tourists from Bangladesh, particularly in view of India's cutback on the visas to go to China, and now we consider direct flights between Kunming and Chittagong in order to facilitate those kind of things. So there is multiple things which had been happening. It is to be seen how they now move forward.
No, as you pointed out, there seems to be the feeling in Bangladesh that the onus on improving the relationship now lies with India. What does India need to do?
I think the things are very simple. Simple is that the India needs to do some soul searching. What went wrong? Because the Indian government has given extraordinary and unconditional support to the erstwhile government, the ousted one, and Bangladeshi people hold India responsible in terms of sustaining that autocratic and kleptocratic power which we had been there. So I think there is an essential issue that how the concerned quarter of India looks at its Bangladesh policy and whether they recognize whether anything has gone wrong. I can elaborate on those points, but this is something important that in order to reboot the relationship, or to rebase the relationship, there is a need for rearticulation. But before that, needs a bit of a understanding, retrospection as well. What went wrong? And something went wrong, no doubt about it. The current state of affairs will tell us that. But the second part issues is that one is the retrospection. The other part is the current one. As long as the fugitive prime minister from Bangladesh is a variable in the bilateral equation, this will not be easy, if not impossible. And this is an issue which we have always mentioned, that giving, playing host to a fleeing prime minister is fine, but if that prime minister plays politics sitting on a safe land, is not at all acceptable. That would be considered as an hostile act. So these are the two issues I would like to highlight. One is retrospection, and another is taking out the fugitive prime minister from the bilateral equation.
What do you think India missed or did not understand about the changed situation in Bangladesh?
I think what happened is that those who really articulated the Indian approach to Bangladesh, at the end of the day, they looked it through the security lens. They really did not really look at, even they looked at the the development projects, connectivity, and everything through the security lens. And when they talked about the cooperation, they essentially meant interdependence in certain way, which will enhance the security. And there are, I think, valid reasons for India to, based on the history, not to feel worried about it. So I think what was important to lay down the red lines, and one of the red lines, of course, that we don't use each other territory for insurgencies and armed attacks and etc. etc. That's one. But what really happened is that in order to sustain that narrative or that particular approach, they went on to support provide legitimacy to a government which, on three consecutive times, really did fraudulent elections in different orders, which was totally not acceptable by the people at large and not participated by the opposition. And even when they're there, there will be their fraudulent behavior and the whole machinery, administrative machinery, both uniformed and ununiformed, they all came down in favor of the then ruling party in that way. Regrettably, when many of the international partners were circumspect about it, India really went ahead in terms of providing unabashed and uncontrolled support or unconditional support to the then government. So what has happened in Bangladesh is that all the misdeeds which the former prime minister has done, and she has done tremendously badly with the people, her own people. People hold India responsible because they were providing her the support and everything. Just to give you one example, even in her after her last election, 2024, and she went to India visit, and she signed the railway connectivity uh, um, treaty. And people, however logical that may be, economically, connectivity wise, multimodal system development, people saw it that this was a down payment for the Indian support to an illegitimate government. And immediately, people became much more anti-Indian in that way. So I think what went wrong is that instead of respecting the people or really doing relationship with the people to people, or to other with other stakeholders, whether it's private sector or opposition or civil society, the Indian government decided exclusively to invest on Awami League and its leaders. And as a result, when these people are gone, they have really lost their support base in many ways, and or any other interlocutors, unfortunately, which is very, very sad. What is more worrying is that even after the debacle of 5th August 2024, when our former prime minister fled to Delhi or India for that matter. I don't know where she is. The issue is, even after that, that narrative did not change for the Indian, I don't know what to call them, the power brokers inside. And whether they're in the South Bloc or elsewhere, the issue is that they're hanging on to that particular narrative instead of really doing that retrospection and rebooting and rearticulating and taking the relationship forward. That is what is it. And that's where you see how the Indian media puts up various kinds of fake newses and semi half-truth newses. Of course, there had been attack on the religious minorities and others. Most of them had been politically associated with the ruling party. But overacting on that or overreacting or exaggerating the things and etc. did not help the situation at all. And then all the good gesture, even when the chief advisor a couple of weeks back talked about how to integrate, do these seven sisters and do sub-regional cooperation and other things, I didn't see that there was much response from the Indian side. So by now it is becoming clearer that the Indo-Bangla relationship, Indian side, is not any more interested to develop it with the current government, which is a legitimate government, may not be an elected government, but a very legitimate government, which is moving towards the elections. And the current Indian side possibly is going to wait and see till another new government comes. And in that sense, many of the issues will remain in oblivion for us or unsettled, unfortunately.
The years that the BNP was in power, there were a number of security issues that India faced from Bangladesh, and the red lines that you talked about, that we will not use each other's territory to launch attacks on our neighbors. That was not strictly followed. And there were problems at the border, there were problems with various Islamist groups. So it's not as if India decided to support Sheikh Hasina because, just out of the blue. There was a certain track record that India did not want to face once more. Is there a sense in Bangladesh of this track record?
No, I think there are feelings about that, although some people would say that these were all engineered things, not necessarily true or half truth. But the
Mhm.
point is not that. Every country has its own problems. And the issue is that whether the country, when the people decide to change a government, whether an extra territorial force has the right to impose that government on them. So you go back into the history. Bangladesh have had a government of Irshad, Begum Zia, and Hasina as well in that way. But in this period, also the governments in India have changed. There have been the Congress government, United Fronts, and everything, and then for some time now, the BJP government is there. So I do not, we as the citizens of another country, we do not impose our choices on what type of government that country or neighbor is going to have. It is the choice of the people. And we will have to learn to live with that and lay down our, the parameters of the relationship. We don't try to artificially or impose a government or support a government which does not generate or enjoy people's support, and this can become very counterproductive. The current state of affairs in Bangladesh is a classical case of a policy gone wrong and how counterproductive has Indian approach has become in the present circumstances. So never in the history of Bangladesh, the anti-Indian sentiment has been so high. And why it is? Because they look at it that the collateral responsibilities of the Sheikh Hasina government is lies with Delhi. Unfortunately, that that may not be fully true, but that is what is the perception. If we follow in most recently, the Indian foreign minister's, I think, observations with the parliamentary caucus or something, where he said we were aware of that anti-Hasina feeling, but we couldn't do much about it. You see, this is the first time possibly somebody high ups is coming out and making that point, and that is very, very, very interesting, that recognition, but at the same time the inability to take that logic to its concluding end.
You repeatedly have used the word impose. An extraterritorial power is imposing a government on the people of Bangladesh. What do you actually mean by imposing? I don't get that. I mean, they didn't really elect, India didn't elect Sheikh Hasina to power there. So,
Nobody elected Sheikh Hasina. That is the problem. Nobody elected Sheikh Hasina for 15 years. And our big neighbor, they pretended as if she is that on top of the world, and she was vetted and feted by the neighbors in that way. Even when, as I said, even when the OECD countries, even US and others were very circumspect and down to earth or low key in these cases, and that is how the things have happened, and that is the perception which went on throughout the people. Even if they are wrong, and suppose they are wrong, I haven't seen any attempt on behalf of our neighbors to dispel that through public diplomacy. So the public diplomacy also in these cases had never been very effective, unfortunately.
given that Bangladesh is wooing and is being wooed by two of India's bugbears in the region, you said, you made the point that India did not respond to the chief advisor's desire to meet Prime Minister Narendra Modi. But given that Bangladesh is now seeking to revive its relationship with Pakistan, has had this extensive visit by Professor Yunus to Beijing. Don't you think it also takes two hands to clap? I mean, the fact that the Pakistan government has begun to offer military training to Bangladesh, and it is that there is also trade beginning between the two countries, direct trade. Whereas earlier the ships used to dock at some other port, maybe Singapore or Malaysia, and then the ships used to other ships used to carry the goods to Bangladesh. But now I believe the Pakistani ships are directly docking in Chittagong. So all this is, in a sense, um, it is creating security fears. It's like a self fulfilling prophecy, perhaps you can call it, but it is creating security fears in India. So my point is, what can Bangladesh do here?
Let me take a step back. When Bangladesh bought two submarines from China, such security fears also was flagged, and it was time of Sheikh Hasina. She is the one who bought it. So I think there would be security concerns of individual countries without jeopardizing the security dimensions of the neighbors or other countries. That's how things work. When we are dealing with this moving frontiers of geostrategic landscape at this moment. So it is not only a bilateral issue, but it's a regional. So within that, when you talk about this in for example, the submarine case, we also spoke that we still have the Indo-Pacific negotiations going on, and we have the Indian Ocean Rim discussion. So there are other platforms in order to take care of that. Similarly, in this case, why on earth Pakistani ships cannot come directly to Bangladesh, I have no idea. Why should that be a concern in that way? Because it should fulfill all the commercial requirements in terms of both trade tariffs and also supply chain issues. If others can come, they can come too. And in order to, if to do nefarious acts, Pakistani ships, that can also happen with the Indian ships or any other third country as well, because the terrorists do not belong to a particular country, they belong to organizations which operate multinationally. So I don't think that is the concept. The point is that for all problems, you need, in bilateral or multilateral or regional, you need a platform to discuss things, to flag your concerns, and also listen to the other side and act and agree on activity. At this particular moment, by declining to meet our head of government, we have really lost that particular opportunity. And we can, we can, feel bad as a bad loser in this case, because India at this moment has lost out on Bangladesh policy. It could have been the similar thing when India did the blockade to Nepal. That was the one generation which it has lost out also in Nepal, unfortunately. The same thing may be said about the our Mauritius, the
Maldives.
Maldives colleagues as well. There are also experience with Sri Lanka. I don't bring in Pakistan at all at this moment. So I think this is a time not only for, I'm a very humble person to give such an advice to such a big country with such intellect and experience and competence, that it is time to have a look at how we improve not only bilaterally, but how we improve collectively. So collectively, the platform also is not there. The SARC is de facto dead. And we by now know, as long as Pakistan is there in any of the platforms, India is not interested and will not be, possibly for its own reasons, rightly or not so rightly, will not be interested in that. So the issue is that we don't have subcontinental also platform to discuss things. We do have a BIMSTEC. Anywhere there is China or there is Pakistan, India will not be interested as such. And on the sub-regional level, when we didn't have SARC, we thought of sub-regional level cooperation, India, Bangladesh, Nepal, and Bhutan. But look, there's a small strip of land between Bangladesh and Nepal, and we cannot have our transit. Look at the small strip of land with Bhutan and us, we cannot bring the power. So when India had all the access through Bangladesh, whether it has used it adequately or not, that's another debate. Whether the infrastructure is there or not is another debate. But the fact of the matter is, in the last 15, 17 years, with all the good relationship with India, we could not get access to Nepal and or to Bhutan. So you see, and even we couldn't do a direct bilateral, we have to do a dual bilateral. So first, Nepal will sell it to India, India then will sell it to us, or they will control this or the other. So you see, the concern which we say that India in South Asia believes in multiple bilateral. It does not necessarily believes in regional agreements or other things, which are much more, stable and predictable and more rule-based in these circumstances. So Bangladesh-India relationship in the current context has multiple dimensions or multiple lessons. It is not only about the other regional powers like China. It is not only about the other more, acrimonious relationships like Pakistan, but it has also broader dimensions now in the post-Trump era. And in the post-Trump era, when we are seeing the relationships are going topsy-turvy from Gaza to Greenland, from Gaza to Greenland. So this is how do we really fit in, and we really need to have a bit more enlightened and forward-looking view how to go about it, and not be and look at it. How do we restructure the relationship? So if and it is for us, we have now understood in Dhaka that Indian government, the current Indian government, is not going to move much as long as the current interim government is in power in Dhaka. So they will have to wait for the new government. That is the message now possibly is coming from Delhi.
There was on the National Day, on Bangladesh's National Day on March 26, which is just 3-4 days ago, Prime Minister Narendra Modi wrote to Mohammad Yunus and said India was committed to advancing this partnership driven by our common aspirations for peace, stability, and prosperity, and based on mutual sensitivity to each other's interests and concerns. How does
very well articulated and much appreciated.
And why is this?
And that statement got front page coverage in all the daily newspaper in Dhaka. It was the headline news in our television news as well.
So what has Dhaka taken away from this statement? Why has there been no response to this statement?
It is a diplomatic ritual, but the choice of words are important. How it is written. So we have taken note of that. So and that propriety remains at a certain level over there. But at the end of the day, the taste of the cake is in eating. So at this moment, what is really, let me put you, Nirupamaji, very concretely. We are in dual realism. There is a one reality, which is the economics, which is going on. We have doing the trade. We are still having the Indian contractors doing various kinds of projects. We have the LOC not moving very fast, but nonetheless, we are still trying to struggle with that. And this is one reality. And then there is another surreality. There is a surreal life out there. The surreal life is that the anti-Indian diatribe which goes on in various sections of the Bangladeshi people who feel that they have been wronged, and they also look at how the religious minorities are being treated in India, and they feel also that solidarity with the much more oppressed minorities in Bangladesh, in India, and they also feel that how the Indian visa system is working and etc. So there is another surrealism. So realism and surrealism, they're coexisting at this moment. And the currently Bangladesh is going through a catharsis. It is a sublimation of all the negative feelings through which it has come through in the last 15 years and 17 years. And then there are prehistory over there. So I think one will have to be a bit cautious in terms of rushing to conclusion so that they do not preempt better solution when the real time comes. That is the point I'm trying to make. And at this moment, all the narrative which is coming from the Indian media and those, sometimes Gogoli, going back to the Goebbelian way of looking at it, and half truth, fake truth, and fake news, and etc., is not helping at all. By highlighting the case of the religious minorities being persecuted in Bangladesh, the way it is being done does not necessarily help to protect the minorities' concerns over there. It's a much more a constructive, ongoing, supportive political relationship which can provide more protection than somebody doing a talk show and in a loud voice trying to provide anti-Bangladeshi or if not anti-Muslim sentiments out there.
Foreign Minister Mr. Jaishankar told Parliament, and you also referred to a part of that statement, that there were 2,400 incidents relating to attacks on minorities, and in 2024, and in 2025, 72 incidents. So this is not a media fabrication. This is a minister putting out the numbers in Parliament. And he said that this continues to be a matter of concern for our government. So would you say that he, that this is also an exaggeration?
The issue is that, and what has happened to those numbers? The issue is there are many ways of calculating this. This is nobody is denying that after the departure of the former prime minister, the law and order situation was very weak. The police system was totally dysfunctional because police recruitments were essentially the party people, and they fled. Some of them were killed. And the army, up to a point, could hold on to it, and there were other paramilitaries which were on the street and etc. So there was a severe dearth of security arrangements in the country. This is number one. Number two, as I mentioned earlier, many of the religious minorities historically were supporters of the ruling party. The then ruling party, the Awami League. So it is very difficult to distinguish when you are attacking a Hindu or where you are attacking an Awami League leader. So this is a tricky question on that. But more importantly, is that this may be a double vulnerability. It may be a double vulnerability for these people. But more importantly, whether any actions have been taken afterwards in order to protect those people and bring the perpetrators to justice. I think that is where you will see the difference, and the awareness within this government, within the society, and others to do and look into that. But what we quite often forget that the religious minorities in Bangladesh are, of course, the majority in India. But the religious minorities in India are majority in Bangladesh. So when India comments on the state of affairs of the Hindu minorities in Bangladesh, also the ethnic minorities in Chittagong Hill Tract, that's another tricky issue. But they should also remain, sensitive to the fact that how they treat their own minorities has an implication for reciprocal or collateral damage they inflict on the minorities in Bangladesh. I think the minority relationship in respective countries will remain as one of the important determinant of stability and peaceful coexistence in our country in the future. This aspect has been neglected earlier. It may not have been very prominent earlier, but now in the era of identity politics, it has become very, very critical in that way. That sensitivity we will have to show.
Um, you're a member of a minority community in Bangladesh. Uh, how secure do you feel in Bangladesh?
No, I'm a bad example in many ways. I've been twice a refugee in India, for example. I stayed in India 64 to 67 after the first riot in 60s. I had been a refugee also during 1971. But my parents didn't leave the country. I came back. I stay. I make my investment. Over here. I came back from abroad after doing my studies. I've resigned from different international positions to make this investment and stay with my community over there. My mother was incidentally member of parliament of the Sheikh Hasina's government party. My father was a judge of the Supreme Court of first Supreme Court of independent Bangladesh, brought in by Sheikh Mujib. So I have my own history on that, but that doesn't really take away my professional approach, fact-based approach to that. But the point is that and I think my existence in Bangladesh and presence provides some kind of a sense of security and solidarity to the broader minority community. So I look at it in that way. My father didn't leave this country because he felt that if he left, the broader society will feel more helpless or insecure in that way. So that is very much there. So the issue is that how do you fight those insecurities? Because there are also progressive people, there are secular people in this country, there are those who really believe in independence and universal freedom, universal human rights. They believe in any type of communalism, against communalism, and etc. So you have to really build that broad-based approach in terms of across the society in order to fight those kind of menaces. And these menaces are in many countries in the world. We may be experiencing it too much at this moment, but there are other moments as well. These are the people who fought in 71 and brought the independence. So we will have to understand what went wrong or what have things changed. And we will have to do some introspection again and soul searching and come back. Why the new generation, how we will catch the imagination of the new generation in this new globalized world, which is really getting disaggregated or being fragmented or and affected by various kind of extremist thinking. So I think that's personally, I think I stay with a risk, but I think it is a collective risk for any citizen in any country for that matter, whoever, whatever identity politics we do. And I strongly feel that there is a strong force within the country which believes in secular non-communal politics and universal human rights, not only for Hindus, but also Christians, Buddhists, Chittagong Hill Tracts ethnic minorities, the tribals, and also the plainland ethnic community. And it is there. And this is what is all about nation building.
How do we look on the recent developments in Bangladesh, where there's been changes that have been suggested to a draft new constitution in which the word secular has been dropped, uh, and there is an emphasis on pluralism, and and there has been people have pointed out in Bangladesh that this is contradictory. I mean, secularism and pluralism must coexist. You cannot drop one and emphasize the other and then say Bangladesh is an Islamic republic, because this is all, it is just self contradictory. There are people who are changing the history books to downplay his role, to downplay that title even. So how do we see all this? What sense are we uh,
So, we- so my
making
answer
of
is
this?
very simple. First, on the constitution, it's just a commission. And a
Yeah.
commission has given a certain report. So I don't get agitated or pegged by all those things separate. This is for one of the inputs which is there to be decided. There are many people from the political parties have objected to that. Some may have felt that it is not enough. Others have seen it is too much. So this is part of a democratic discourse, and it is going to happen, and the political process will take its lead on that. So overreacting on this kind of things, I don't think is useful at this moment, because it's not a done deal. There is a process underway. On the other hand, we should also remember that there are many people in any democratic society who will hold different types of views. If I go on saying that there are people who in your country calls us termite, so and hold that against the government, that would also not be fair. So I think there are many people who are, because of their lack of understanding or because of their values and ideology, they will be abusing other people for various reasons for their own benefit. So I think for us, the civil society, and as a non-partisan civil society, we will look into those things with proper measure and or with proper calmness over there, and not use those kind of things to aggravate the situation and allow the things to happen. As I said, we are going through a catharsis. We are going through. We are going. We are trying to really re-understand what exactly happened with us during the last 15 years. How people were killed. How the involuntary disappearances happened. How millions of dollars were stolen. How the elections were stolen. How people were killed. So this is a situation which we are currently going through. And as I said, there is a reality and there is a surreality. This is a surreal situation in which we are going. The issue is whether Indo-Bangla relationship will be a helpful instrument or and handle to this, or Indo-Bangla relationship will aggravate the situation. Citizens of this Bangladesh over here, they're well-meaning and forward-looking, and including our chief advisor, looks forward to Indo-Bangla relationship as a advantage in order to dealing with the situation, instead of aggravating it and taking it to the extreme and trying to portray through the Indian media Bangladesh is a mini Pakistan. That does not help at all. It undermines our dignity and possibly a disrespect in many ways to this country's people. Heritage in many ways. So what I'm arguing today evening is that it's for till now at this today, the message we are getting is that India is not ready to engage. India is not ready to engage at the political level with the current government, and the rest is at this moment is standard what pro forma exercises going on at this moment. The momentum generated by Mr. Narendra Modi's telephone call and Professor Yunus participation in the virtual conference, the meeting we had with Mr. Jaishankar in New York, and then your Foreign Secretary's visit to Dhaka did not go a step further to its logical end. We have just missed an opportunity. And that really created a bit of a moral hazard for Bangladesh. And now we are being asked that we got close to China or anything else. Life is not going to wait, you know.
I'm just wondering if Bangladesh can ever move beyond the demand that India should send back Sheikh Hasina. Meaning, is that even a serious demand? Because the demand we've seen that the demand has been made several times, but it has not been made in the legal way, which of course will require Bangladesh to take several steps in the country itself, due process in the country, an investigation into the crimes that are alleged against her. So it looks the way the statements are made, it looks as if they are being made for optics, crowd pleasing statements on the Bangladeshi side.
I see that the demand for extradition is a serious one because the judicial process and the International Criminal Tribunal has started. Investigations are going on. The cases dossier are being prepared. I think the Attorney General's office is working on it. The Chief Prosecutor's office is working on it. So there are the requests are being processed and legal ways. In fact, Bangladesh has considered very seriously of taking the case to the International Court of Justice, to The Hague. That is also being at this moment been explored in many ways. And so this will process and some kind of a judicial redress is very much becoming a sine qua non or a prerequisite for as we move into the national elections. So I think that a process will be done with or without her presence. That much we can predict at this moment, because that has some kind of an what you call transitional justice has to be achieved before the country moves into the national elections by the end of the year. So that is there. But the point with your guest in your country is that uh, whether you give this is an issue which I have spoken about this earlier to my Indian colleagues and to international media, and later the government itself has taken it over. Is one thing you let a person and leave there in order to save the life and etc. The other thing, you allow the person to do politics, sitting their base, the hospitality of one of the host country, and meddle into the bilateral matters or the internal matters of the other country. Just imagine the Honorable Dalai Lama every day giving a speech on the human rights situation in the Republic of China. Can you imagine what it will happen? So this is what exactly is happening. And this is what we have told explicitly on many occasions, including from the government. Give her this, refuge, no problem on that, but keep her shut. She cannot go on doing this megaphone diplomacy and using telephones and other things and doing webinars and etc. and meddling in the internal matters of the country. So, which essentially becomes a parallel or an alternative voice for the government itself, the host country. So then the host country bears some responsibility of what is coming from that territory on that. So the answer is very simple. The answer is very simple for Bangladesh-India relationship. The fugitive prime minister cannot be, should not be, an variable which will undermine the bilateral relationship in certain ways. At this moment, it is.
But do you believe? I mean, the Awami League is completely scattered. A lot of people, a lot of its leaders, including, of course, Sheikh Hasina, are not in the country. Do you really believe that she's so powerful sitting outside somewhere that she can actually incite a rebellion or oust the interim administration? Because
Out of
today, I
question.
believe a
I don't.
case has been filed against her in Dhaka for conspiring to
No.
overthrow the interim administration.
Nirupamaji, I am not saying that she is so powerful that she can incite rebellion and change the government. That is out of question.
Yeah.
So that is beyond her means and competence and capacity at this moment. That is not the point. The point is that the Awami League has stolen so much money, they still hold money, a lot of money within the country and elsewhere. There are also people who are inside the country as well on that. So you may create a instability in the situation. As I said, we are going through a catharsis. So you can create a unsettled circumstances which undermines the pro-election process. And the government has made it very clear, the chief advisor in particular, that Awami League will not be banned, but those who have really been perpetrated, they will be sued. They will be brought to justice. So we have made that very clear. So as a party, they can come and function if they want to, but they are not in a position, any moral position to organize at this moment. Unfortunately, they are not on the ground on that. Rather, they are trying to join other parties and etc., etc. When the election comes, we will see what happens. But that is not my point today evening. My point is that whether she is jeopardizing our bilateral relationship, that is the point. It is not about Bangladesh, what is happening inside in that way. Whether this megaphone diplomacy on her part, not being able to keep her shut, is really affecting our bilateral relationship. Can you imagine any of the, Northeast provinces, sisters, one of the insurgent sitting in Dhaka and doing radio telephone conversation on Delhi, and how a Delhi would react to that? And I have given you the issue of the Honorable Dalai Lama, how China would have reacted to this. So I think, and India is possibly investing on a spent force at this moment, if they want to. It looks like a bad loser that they have lost it out on her, but still doesn't let go. Let go. Let's start in afresh.
I just wanted to take you back to the, to the Awami League. Is the Awami League going to be allowed to participate in the elections?
As I said, the government has made it very clear. As a party, they will not be banned. There is a big voice which wants them to be banned. That is also true. And the chief advisor had been very explicit about it. Those who have done wrong, they will be taken to the court. But as a party, we are not really banning anything. Whatever is required by the election commission, they will follow the rules. Others, BNP, the largest party, has also said that they don't have any view on this. It is for the people to decide. Jamaat-e-Islami also, I don't think they have said to ban the party. So I think, but there are the young leaders who have been really at the, got the short end of the stick. They are very militant on these issues. It will be solved out. The issue is not whether they will be given the space or not, whether they are capable of fulfilling that space or not. That is the issue. Even if you give the space, there are two major moral hazards involved for our meeting. The first of all is that they will need a new leadership, and immediately that leadership is not visible. And the first family, uh, Sheikh Mujib's family, Sheikh Hasina's family, they would like to have a family member in charge, and that is immediately not very visible, readily. And number two, if they participate in the election, they technically accept the legitimacy of Yunus government. So there will be also that consideration. They would not like to say that would like to say that by participating, we are giving legitimacy to this government, and by implication. So there will be also very careful about that. So I wouldn't have bothered so much about Awami League being participating or not participating. The issue is even without Awami League, there we have many more challenges in terms of holding a free, fair, and participatory and inclusive election. So we should, in fact, this whole Awami League issue at this moment would be a distraction because they themselves are not ready for it. And their leadership will not allow them to engage in this kind of things over there. So
you yourself seem to suggest that unless Sheikh Hasina returns and faces the legal proceedings against her, elections, I mean, this is like a precondition for elections almost to
no,
be.
no, no. Sheikh Hasina's return or no return is not an issue. Issue is that those who have been involved in mass killing
Yeah,
in July, August, and etc. will be brought to justice. And she
right.
led and she led that. She gave the orders and everything. We now have on record all those things. So that is part of that. And election will happen, and chief advisor has made it very explicit at the end of the year, at best by the June next year. So I think people are getting ready for that. By that time, whatever reforms happens and etc. And then the judicial process will go side by side over there. The point is that whether India will be a part of the solution or still continue to be aggravating the problem which we are facing on that. We want India to be on the right side because there is also a very strong group within Bangladesh at this moment who exactly doesn't feel comfortable with India in any form. So, we should be very careful where we are really doing the balancing act, whether by taking a very extreme view, as India is at this moment, you are not, whether you are doing a self-fulfilling prophecy of their own in the way by playing into the hands of the extremists who really do not believe in any forms of cooperation, not only on economic grounds, but on ideological grounds. So I think for India, it is very important for it to understand where its own policy is leading into. And if it thinks that leading into that helps its domestic policy, then God forbid, because Bangladesh becoming a variable for Indian domestic policy. Now you are in part of my domestic policies. Tomorrow we can become part of your domestic policies. And you have governments around the border which do not necessarily have BJP governments. So that can be a variable as well. We are also looking at all those possibilities at this moment over there. So I think it's time to, take a step back and look at it. Where do we really want to go? And not to play a short game, but a longer game.
So, in all this sort of very gloomy picture that has
Not at all
emerged,
gloomy. Not at all gloomy. We see it very positively and very positively. We have changed the government through an upheaval. How can it be gloomy?
no, but
It is, it is a
when you say
great success of the
catharsis,
people of Bangladesh and Mao students.
definitely when you say the country is undergoing a catharsis and they burn the house of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman,
Unfortunately,
that doesn't send out good signals to us. So that is in a sense
you
gloomy
see,
for us.
bu- but that house was burned was very wrong, no doubt about that. But you'll also have to understand why people go to that kind of action. You know, you see, every action has to be explained in certain ways. When the extreme attitudes show up in that way, these are not sustainable, these are not reasonable, but these are emotional and an expression to some other misgivings which are there. That's the
But this is
reality.
a dangerous road that we go down on all the time in India when there
All
are
countries,
riots here.
all
Where there are riots here,
ma'am,
people's
ma'am,
emotions
all
went
countries have these
berserk.
roads. All countries have this road. It's
All
not
these
exclusive to Bangladesh.
I know that,
Your
which is
country
why
has
I'm
this road.
saying.
I can also mention that what they do, and I won't be doing the finger pointing. So the issue is that we all have this situation. We'll have to approach it with understanding and care, and not aggravate the situation by highlighting one part of it and forgetting the rest of it. We see the consequences, but we don't see the cause. That is not fair. I think it is time that we look at it in the right way. And my appeal to you, through you to your readership, would be that the well meaning people of India and the well meaning people of Bangladesh have nothing to do with all these things which is happening over there, and they have a common future to build, supporting each other based on the history and geography and possibly psychology. So we'll have to look into those things and that. The issue is are we missing the opportunity?
So that's one relationship that's really suffered because of this, isn't it? The people to people contact. I mean, earlier there were exchanges of academics, writers, poets, medical tourists, all that. And that stopped completely, isn't it? That's another thing that has happened in as a fallout of these times that we are in.
What you call
The people to
collateral
people,
damage. This is
yeah,
called collateral damages. These are
that's right.
collateral damages, unfortunate ones. We need to correct it. And I say always that it is the Indian, the policy, those who are in the, not policymakers, but those who have the capacity to influence the policies, those move within the corridors of power, those who had been in Bangladesh, there are a number of them over there, they should really reach out and see the reality and not remain stuck to their old narrative in that way. My regret is that India, with all its history, education, erudition, and everything else, on this particular context for the last 6, 7 months, is still stuck with the past. As I say, they are not let go that one. And I suspect those who have really formulated the Indo-Bangla relationship through the prism of Sheikh Hasina are still running the show in this case, unfortunately. They are not really doing that revision which is necessary at this moment.
But despite all this, trade still goes on. The trade between the
Despite
two
all this,
countries goes
trade,
on.
both formal and informal, goes on, and unfortunately, because of the informal trade, we are having quite often border killing, which is still an issue, major issue in Bangladesh. But we have been able to carry on with our imports. As you know, India is single. Well, after China, the single most second most important sources of our import, and also not only for our daily necessities, but also our industrial goods for garments factories and others. And also the exports to India, India has generously provided us the duty-free, quota-free market access. We have been improving our export volume into India. That is still going, will be there. So the
And they
commercial
concluded an electricity agreement between Nepal,
the
India,
50
and
megawatt
Bangladesh.
we could
Yeah,
really bring in finally. I
yeah.
will have to see. And then there was this initial issues with revising or rescinding all the contracts with India. But as you can see, we have started paying back Mr. Adani, and we are getting our power supply. It has been restored over there. We are looking into the letter of the line of credits. The fast moving part of it has to be completed as fast as possible. And we'll see how many we carry forward in the upcoming budget. So the economic front is still vibrant in many ways, they really. But the unfortunate part is our businessmen cannot go to India. And so there is no visa situation as it stands on that. You see how the politics is becoming a barrier in this case. It's time that we look through all these things and move on with a new approach, and be respectful to each other government. I have seen the ups and downs. I have been inside outside. My idea is that the things will clear out within a year or so. But the issue is that with what type of baggage we will come out after that year, in that by the middle of 2026, I am pretty sure Indo-Bangladesh relationship will look much more promising and much more on solid grounds. But the issue is that should we whether we will increase bad feelings while coming out of that. That is not desirable.
Thank you so much for your time and for your views, sharing your views and observations on the India-Bangladesh relationship with us, Dr. Debapriya Bhattacharya. Thank you.
Thank you.